Hello, darlings. You know how it goes. Setting up the audio and seeing that it's balanced out okay. Hope you're all keeping cool. It's a hot one for a lot of us out there. Let's see, the music's a little loud. Let's drop that down. There we go. Does that seem better? Voice is not competing too much with it. Alright, that seems okay. And let's get rid of that. So today we're gonna finish up this Dracula puzzle. And then after that we're going to read some Edgar Allen Poe stories from a cool book that I found in a local share library. Isn't that neat? There's not a lot of the puzzle left. I'm thinking maybe an hour at most, but we'll see, because these little webbing parts are pretty tricky, but it's a fun puzzle. I like it a lot. Also, thank you to everybody that's been following and supporting. And a shout out to Lovesick, who followed in between streams. And yeah, let's get started. Hope you're all having a very good day today. I am personally having a great one, and also sweating to death. Let's see. seatbelt. Do you want to come see the puzzle? Okay. Now I see. Hey, Prince. Both the cats are wandering around nearby. We'll see if they show up. Hey, Prince. Hey, Bat! It's nice to see you. Glad you could stop by. Sorry if it took me a moment to see you. I'm starting to get hyperfixated on finishing this puzzle. thank you. Oh, that sounds super fun. I hope you have a lot of fun painting nails. Have a good lurk. Prince, come here. Come here, Prince. Hi, Polar Express. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Yeah, I love this puzzle. I have a couple others that are also like classic Hollywood horror monster illustrations. And I just love them so much. They're so much fun. And the art is so cool. Oh, temperature changing nail polish is so cool. They're gonna look fabulous. Prince keeps lurking around, but she's not jumping up on the table yet. I give her a couple, like maybe another 30 or 40 minutes, and she probably will. Hey, Polar. Yeah, of course. I've always loved jigsaw puzzles. I grew up doing them. When I was super, super little, I even used to have some of those like old Puzz 3D puzzles. And I just always really found a lot of relaxation from doing puzzles. So I wanted to start doing very chill streams, and doing puzzles seemed kind of one of the most chill things that I could think of. I'm not going super fast right now. I get a little frustrated because I usually solve a little faster. But I don't know, for some reason on stream I always solve slower. I guess I just have to get used to it. But it's still fun, so. Do you do a lot of jigsaw puzzles too? That sounds super fun. And here she is. Hi, Prince. I love you, baby. And there she goes. Prince always likes saying hi. My other cat Seatbelt is a little more shy though, so I don't think she'll jump up anytime soon. Up here? Of course, you're just off camera. Let me see if... Ooh, 1500. If my table was a little bigger, I would do more 1500s. That sounds like it's going to be really fun, though. I always love sorting. You can see I actually have some trays from when I sorted earlier. Well, a couple streams ago. It's a fun part of the puzzle. for asking. Go ahead, Polar. Let me know. Ooh. That's an interesting idea. I always work on the edges first, but I don't think I've actually ever tried working on the middle instead of the edges. I'm gonna try that next time. That seems really cool. Oh, yeah. You think so too? Okay. I know. You're sweet, girl. You're always very sweet. Yeah, Bat, you can finally see Prince. Also, it's just the time of day. The light kind of glaring on the puzzle here will go away soon. Yeah. She'll keep popping up every now and again. Oh my gosh, let me fix the camera so that it stops doing that auto-focusing thing. Sorry. That's terrible. Hold on. I always turn off the autofocus and then it always decides to turn itself back on. Okay, that should stabilize. There we go. It's like right above him. I'm keeping him in line so that he doesn't act up and doesn't give me any trouble. Just kind of leaving it there as a threat. Like, you stay there, Bela Lugosi. Don't you do any Dracula tricks. Lo-fi Bond villain energies to chill to. But yeah, Prince doesn't like being not the center of attention, so she does like jumping up on the puzzle table quite a bit. So she'll probably pop in and out. Pat, I'm trying not to laugh too loud. It's really good. And Seatbelt was sneaking around on the edges, but she was like literally 1 centimeter away from being on camera. And she left before I could adjust the camera. But she's like, she keeps circling like a foot away from the puzzle. Like a little shark. Oh, I love my cats. Yes, I'm talking about you, Seatbelt. Sounds like you're off to a strong start, Polar. Very juicy. Oh, okay. There we go. Sorry for the sunlight, Bella. Okay, that makes more sense. likes lo-fi a lot, but it is kind of repetitive. So let's see. Maybe something new might be. Ooh, that's pretty nice. Alright, let's try that one for a bit. This. Hey, baby girl. Up. Do you want to go up? No? Okay. You sure? Now we're cooking with gas. Let's go. This is the last tray, by the way. Almost done. Hey, Lovesick. Nice to see you. Thank you for the follow. Hope you're having a good one. Ooh, yeah. Prince, come here. Okay. Come here. Good girl. Do you want to help with the last pieces? Yeah? Oh. You gonna stick around, Prince? How am I doing? Thank you. Yes, you give the best headbutts. Thank you. Thank you, sweetie. Do you want to help me put down the last pieces? What you think? You can stay as long as you'd like, sweetie. Okay. Yeah, that looks much more comfy. There you go. Smooth all those pieces down. Get some of the cat hair off. couple pieces. Let's go. We did it! Smoothing. Wow. Bella in all his glory. Though what's really interesting is that Bela Lugosi is actually is quite a handsome man. But it just speaks to how terrifying they did his Dracula makeup. That he looks so like kind of stalling and jarring of like, oh my gosh. But when he was out of Dracula makeup, and especially when he was a young man, he was a super, super handsome guy. But yeah, I don't know. I recommend reading up on Bela Lugosi. He was a really, really cool union man. He was one of the founders of SAG-AFTRA, which is incredible in and of itself, but he was also an ardent anti-fascist. He wanted to eliminate Nazis from the world, which is very cool, and he used his power and sway in the United States to fight for refugee rights and fight for the rights of Jewish refugees after World War II and during World War II. So that was a tangent, but I just really love Bela Lugosi. Yeah, I'm gonna take a, let's see, where are we at? I'm gonna take a 10-minute stretch break, and then I'm gonna find some new music and start reading some cool Edgar Allan Poe stories. But for now, enjoy the puzzle in all of its glory. We finally finished it, and I will be back in 10. Go stretch, go hydrate. See you in a bit. Let's find some music that will match our little book here. Isn't it cute? Very, very old paperback. Okay, let's see. Maybe... lower it just a bit. Okay. Just gonna get it right there. Okay. All right. Let's update. I'm hoping the sound effects are cool, but if they're more annoying than cool, then let me know, and I'll find a different backing track. Or if it's competing too much with my voice, let me know. But something I'm really excited about is that there's a couple good ones in here. But one of my favorite short stories of all time is the first one up, which is The Cask of Amontillado. And I haven't done reading out loud in a while, so I'm gonna maybe be a little bit rusty, but I'll do my best. And I'm thinking that reading Cask of Amontillado would be a good way to get back into it. Look how wild that woodcut is. Okay. Thank you, Edgar Allen Appropriate Raven. The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his see, I'm rusty. Connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity to practice imposture upon the British and the Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk one evening, during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting, party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of the carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in this matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado! I have my doubts. Amontillado! And I must satisfy them. Amontillado! As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, 'Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry.' And yet some fools will have it that his taste is much a match for your own. Come, let us go." "Whither?" "To your vaults." "My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I have perceived that you have an engagement. Lucchesi, I have no engagement. Come." "My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre." "Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon, and as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado." Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person. I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, and as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. It just dawned on me that I should probably change the category to... Sorry. It sparked in my mind, and I was just like, oh, I have to do it before I get distracted. I guess this would be just chatting. There we go. Sorry. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe? Said he. It is farther on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned toward me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. Niter? He asked at length. Niter, I replied. How long have you had that cough? My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It is nothing, he said at last. Come, I said with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi. Enough, he said. The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, I replied, and indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle which I drew from a long row of its fellows, and that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him with the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot d'or in a field azure, and the foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nemo me impune lacessit. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes, and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through walls of piled bones with casks and puncheons intermingling. Sorry, Bat, you were 100% right. You're so right, though. The Montresors are the only people allowed to use the motto "Don't tread on me" in Latin. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through walls of piled bones with casks and puncheons intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs, and paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The niter, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back, or it is too late. Your cough, it is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first, another draught of the Medoc. No, please do. I love sassing this story too. It is one of my favorites. I broke and reached him a flagon of the Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed, and he threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise and repeated the movement, a grotesque one. "You do not comprehend?" he said. "Not I," I replied. "Then you are not of the Brotherhood." "How? You are not of the Masons?" Yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason?" A Mason," I replied. "A sign," he said. "It is this," I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire. "You jest," he explained, recoiling a few paces. "But let us proceed to the Amontillado." "Be it so," I said, replacing the tool beneath my cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed by the replacing of bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no special use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi, he is an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, and he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other by about 2 feet, horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, and the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help but feel the niter. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more I must implore you to return, no? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." And as I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar, and with these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. And there remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh over it, about the palazzo, over our wine, the Amontillado," I said. "Yeah, yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo? The Lady Fortunato and the rest. Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone." "For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." To these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient, and I called out loud, "Fortunato!" No answer, and I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture, and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end to my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. God, I love that story so much. Let me see if there's maybe... So I think the cricket sounds are a little loud. It's also a very fun story to read, too. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can find an ASMR that fits. Ooh, okay. Here we go. Because another story that I really, really love that's in here is The Mask of the Red Death. And I think this might fit really well. Yeah, no, it's just so, it's so good. Just the mocking, the copycatting, the echoing, like, yeah. That's my favorite line too, of just like, oh, I felt sick. But because it was just so damp down there. That's all. No regrets at all. And just the final, like, rest in peace. Your bones have not been disturbed for 50 years. Oh, so intense. So good. It's a story that has a lot of dialogue that's really fun to get really hammy with, too. Okay, let me see. Mask of the Red Death is. And I'm wondering, some of these I'm actually not familiar with, but I do love Mask of the Red Death. And then I'll see how I'm feeling after that. And if the background music gets too loud, let me know. Drink a little water. The Mask of the Red Death. Right? No, I love Phantom of the Opera too. Though I especially love the book. Oh, that might be a really fun book to read in a series one day. I don't have my old copy anymore, but I bet I could find another copy at the community library where I picked up this book. Yes! uh, I mean, the musical was how I got into it, but like, I sought out the book and I was so happy with the book. The book is so much more interesting. It's a pretty quick read too, but yeah, I definitely need to reread it sometime soon because it's a lot of fun. Let's see. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, and the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains, and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and from the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy, and doubtless, and sagacious. When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. There was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. August. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. This wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and welded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress nor egress to. Well, there's definitely a typo. Egress to towards other sudden impulses of despair or of frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisators. Goodness. There were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, there was wine. All of these and security were within. Without was the Red Death. It was toward the close of the 5th or 6th month of this seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. It was a voluptuous scene, that masquerade. But first, let me tell of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back nearly to the walls on either hand, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here the case was very different, as might have been expected from the Duke's love of the bazaar. The apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left and in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass, whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, and the sixth with violet. The 7th apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same materials and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood color. Now in no one of the 7 apartments was there any lamp or candelabrum, amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof. There was no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within the suite of chambers. But in the corridors that followed the suite, there stood, opposite to each window, a heavy tripod, bearing a brazier fire that projected its rays through its tinted glass and so glaringly illuminated the room. And thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its presence at all. It was in this apartment, also, that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the circuit of the face, and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that, at each lapse of an hour, the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in the performance to hearken the sound, and thus the waltzers, perforce, ceased their evolutions, and there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company. And while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows, as if in confused reverie or in meditation. But when the echoes had finally ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled, if at their own nervousness and folly, and made whispering vows each to the other that the next chiming of the clock should produce in them no similar emotion, and then, after the lapse of 30 minutes, or 60 minutes, which embrace 3,600 seconds of the time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock, and then were the same disconcert and tremulousness and meditation as before. But, in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were peculiar. They had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with barbaric luster. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed, in great part, the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers upon occasion of his great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masqueraders. Be sure they were grotesque. There was much glare and glitter and piquancy and phantasm, much of what had been seen in Hernani. There were arabesque figures with unsuited limbs and appointments. There were delirious fancies, such as the madman fashions. There were much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of that which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the 7 chambers there stalked, in fact, a multitude of dreams, and these the dreams writhed in and about, taking hue from the rooms, and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps. And, anon, there strikes the ebony clock which stands in the hall of the velvet, and then for a moment all is still, and all is silent, save for the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand, but the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light, half-subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again the music swells, and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from many tinted windows, through which stream the rays from the tripods. But to the chamber which lies most westwardly of the 7, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away, and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-colored plains, and the blackness of the sable drapery appalls, and to him whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal, more solemnly emphatic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of the other apartments. But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life, and the revel went whirringly on until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock, and then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened, perhaps, that more of a thought crept, with more of time, into those meditations of the thoughtful among those who revelled, and thus, too, it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before, and the rumor of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz, a murmur, expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then finally of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, It may well have been supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt, and shrouded from head to toe in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage, was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet all this might have endured, if not approved, by the mad revellers around, but the murmur had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbed in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon his spectral image, which, with a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. "Who dares?" he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him. "Who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery?" Good night, lovesick. "Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements." He was in the eastern or blue chamber, in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room, where the prince, with a group of pale courtiers by his side, at first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction of the intruder who, at the moment, also was near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the murmur had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him, so that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, then through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and the shame of his momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger and had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which instantly afterward fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revellers at once threw themselves into the black apartment, and, seizing the murmur, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at the finding of the grave cerement and corpse-like mask, which they handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. and now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night. Like a thief in the night. Sorry. And one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in their despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Something death comes for everybody, doesn't matter how rich you are. I'm actually not familiar with the other two stories, and I'm kind of curious to read them first, especially since the language is a little bit older, so I might do that on my own before I try to go back to them. Also because I don't want any sudden surprise of like, oh no, these are the worst of the stories. And my voice is giving a little bit, but yeah, I think that's a good place to pause for now. Tomorrow on the Strange Pack channel, I am going to be continuing my paper craft project. Oh, Prince, do you want to come up for the closeout? Come here. Prince, come here. Just thinking about it. Come here. I'm actually going to be over on the Strange Pack channel, and we'll be crafting in the afternoon over there, and then I will get back to my regular Monday through Wednesday 5 to 9 Eastern Time schedule next week, barring any wildness at work. But I plan to start painting next week. I do have a lot of puzzles that I would like to get to, but I have a canvas that has been calling out to me for a while, and so I'm going to try to go back to my roots of this channel and paint. So I'm very excited to start painting next week, starting on Monday, and we'll see how long that takes, but that'll probably be 1 or 2 weeks of that with some quiet music, and maybe we'll interrupt every now and again with some reading if I find some more cool books to read. Or if I just kind of want to dip back into the Edgar Allen Poe or any number of other books I have too. I have too many books. But thank you all so much for joining in. Really appreciate all of you. And I'll see if there's anybody going right now. That might be a chill place to go to. Hi, sweetie. You want to say goodbye to everybody? Yeah? Oh no, all the chaotic people I follow are on right now. So, I will just close out here. From me, Prince, and Seatbelt, good night. And yeah. Have a good one, everybody. Take care. Bye. Where's my stop button? Oh no. Come on. There we go.